Hello and welcome wherever you are in the world. Logon is an online magazine of the spiritual school of the Golden Rosycross. We hope that our podcast will provide you with food for thought, inspiration for new questions and impulses in your research for new answers.
Now that we have struggled with the fundamental requirements of keeping distance physically and psychologically, it is important to explore the direction in which the increase in vibration level could ideally result in the experience of Aquarius values. Why? Why? Because it is about human relationships. Why? Because the relationships between human peers are essential for all life on Earth. You might ask, is there a place for Aquarius values in life on Earth? Not yet. Obviously not yet. And maybe we are further away from it than ever. Take, for example, the 31-year-old journalist Gia Tolentino of The New Yorker. According to her, our current values are destructive to our survival. In her book Trick Mirror, she states, among other things, like so many people of my generation, I have grown into a vulnerable, panic-stricken, unstable adult because I saw from an early age that cheating pays off. Nevertheless, many social phenomena bear witness to the increased vibrations that have been deployed to lift up Europe and hence the world. Since the end of the 18th century, it is mainly human consciousness that has been the focus of this elevation. And whether it is caused by the Uranus radiation from our own solar system or any other cause is not an issue. Take, for example, the period from about 1789. In many observations, it is said that this period was culturally marked by enlightenment and romanticism, and one immediately shouts that this enlightenment and romanticism did not help us as humanity. On our way to unity, freedom, and love, or liberté, égalité, fraternité, in spite of their idealistic approach, both the French Revolution and the American struggle for freedom have achieved the opposite goal. And the same is true of the emancipatory innovations that have taken place over the last 2 centuries. Apparently, the increase in vibrations of human consciousness very quickly hit the ceiling and bumped back to harsher worldly relationships of struggle and violence. That is why some describe the impulses of enlightenment and romanticism as false forces on the long road to the values of Aquarius. The exalted principles of Pythagoras and Plato, the measure of the beautiful, the true, and the good, were those of pure proportions, of whole numbers, of perfect figures, and regular bodies. As concretions of abstract concepts, concretions that attempted to embody the ideal, in the interesting book, The Invisible Measure by Andreas Kinniging, the author takes those classical measures as his starting point. Those measures that he derives from Pythagoras, Plato, and Aristotle and Augustine. He observes that enlightenment and romanticism fell far short of the almost divine principles, those of a good and clear distinction between good and evil. Classical values that will seem more or less familiar to us. Enlightenment and romanticism, on the other hand, have resulted in an enormous increase in consumption and selfishness. Nevertheless, especially in the last few centuries, we learned more about the relativity of so-called fixed values such as good and evil, with which the irrefutable dimensioning of antiquity also came to be seen in a different light. The beautiful, the good, and the true, the lofty stepping stones of Plato and Pythagoras became relative. Central to the above-mentioned concretions was a concept of ether as a shaping force. Now, Jan van Reichenborg shows in chapter 15 of The Coming New Man that only outside the physical sphere and its reflection sphere, the ether conditions are pure and therefore completely different, because there the intercosmic ethers arise directly and harmoniously from the original primal substance. Consequently, in the time of transition to Aquarius in our concrete reality, we must not approach the manifestations of the good, the beautiful, and the true in such a way that they would correspond to them. Certainly not in their individual workings. What might have been expressive in antiquity cannot maintain its dimensions in our time. An example in this respect is Pythagoras' music theory of pure sound proportions. In this theory, a Pythagorean rest has often been used to make the vibration, the system, right. But in the conscious need that arose for modulation in all keys, this system could not stand. The sound ratios could not hold on to the pure numbers and had to squeeze, that is to say, reduce slightly, and, except for the octave, crawl under the round numerical ratios. This caused them to float in their vibrational relations, one ratio worse than the other. In the 17th century, Simon Stevin found something about this. If the floating tuning became average so that a similarly floating tuning arose, a temperature could be made that was hardly audibly false. Das wohltemperierte Klavier was born. The wait was only for a great composer, like Bach, who was able to illustrate a universe of maximum modulations within a range of works. Another example which Kepler brought into consciousness is the orbits of the planets around the sun, which, contrary to Plato's suggestion, run in an ellipse. But even essential proportions such as pi and phi the golden section, are not based on pure numbers at all, and in the limited reality of the ethers that shape our field of life, beauty is a lie. A beautiful French village seems beautiful and romantic from afar. But if you come closer, you will see the reality of stinking stables and impassable roads, as indicated in the Chinese gnosis, also by Jan van Reichenborg. Thus, the ugly can be called a proof of the appearance of the beautiful. Likewise, the bad is proof that the good is not good. And the true, then, how has that persisted in the last centuries? More and more, it became clear that truths are accepted concepts necessary to maintain a civil civilization. Nietzsche put it in this way: truths are illusions that have been forgotten to be illusions, metaphors that are worn out and have literally become powerless. Unity, freedom, and love are connected. The vibration increase on the way to Aquarius does not tolerate the measure of antiquity. It is like the Old Testament, which should become new in us, but cannot, because the wine bottles are old. The new truth cannot be given as a single definition, as an unshakable, rigid formula. For Aquarius time, that truth is an organic unity. In interdependence, it is like an equilateral triangle, thanks to Pythagoras, of unity, freedom, and love. But pay attention to the coherence, because there is no unity without freedom. There is no love without unity. There is no freedom without love. The actual increase in vibration results as an act of consciousness, a state of being and doing, which in any case has to do with people. A state of being that has as its energy the fire ether, the first ether that has been released from the compulsive nature of the dialectic. But the human species is governed by the concept of two. Man is far from unequivocal, and the concept of two is central to it, which strongly expressed, for example, in the separation of the sexes. Could this be the case everywhere, in intercosmic ether space, outside the avenging dialectic? Would there be a separation of sexes in the domains of mirrorless purity, as we know it here on Earth? At least as far as the human life wave is concerned, which, after all, also exists in other realities. That does not seem to be the case, at least not as far as Jakob Boehme is concerned. He speaks of the androgynous celestial man as masculine damsel. Aquarius therefore asks us to prepare ourselves as transfigured man, as the male-female we originally were. And we are helped in this by the vibrational increase of people and of the earth that has been set in motion. But we must learn to live out of a unity that is inextricably bound up with freedom and love. Aquarius isn't really a man, but a human being. Man in one piece, in which the female and male have undergone a chemical fusion, ignited by the ether of fire. In profane astrology, Aquarius, that means waterman, the water bearer, is the most feminine masculinity and the most masculine femininity. He, she lives in the valley of the realm, of which it is said in the Tao Te Ching, he who knows his masculine power while maintaining feminine gentleness is the valley of the realm. But going back to that original male-female unity is, of course, no sinecure, and rightly so, that esoteric alchemy presents it as a fire process in which body, soul, and spirit start to form a new unity. In Christian revelation, that fire process depends on a spiritual force, he who makes the two one. And that spiritual force is related to freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And it therefore becomes not so much a back to the original unity, but a forward to the new unity, through a hopefully soon approaching merging process in the power of that Spirit of the Lord. This article is to be continued in Human Relations of the Coming Aquarius Age Part 2.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you wish to support us in reaching more people, like our posts, rate us with 5 stars on iTunes, leave a positive comment where you can, or share our content on your social media.